Well, good evening. Guten Abend. Welcome to Little River. We're so happy this evening to have Reverend Jonas Zanke with us from the Protestant Church in Central Germany. Most of you, I think, saw him on Sunday, and so today we're really happy to get to hear from him in his own words. We were able to connect with Reverend Jonas because of the existing partnership between the Protestant Church in Central Germany and our own Central Atlantic Conference. So I'm very grateful for that partnership that led us to be able to spend this time together. Tonight we have the pleasure of learning all about what it's like to be a pastor in Central Germany, where only a small percentage of the population is Christian and even a smaller percentage attend church services. So I'm sure that we will all learn a lot, and I give you thanks, Reverend Jonas, for being with us and for sharing tonight. So Reverend Jonas is going to give us a presentation, and then we'll have time for questions and answers and discussion at the end. So please write down, take notes so you don't forget your questions, which we'll have time for at the end. And if you are online, we have a number of folks online with us tonight. There will be an opportunity for you, if you just write your questions or your comments in the chat box, then we will read those out as well so that you get your questions answered too. So before we begin, let us pray. God, we give you thanks for your presence with us and with all those around the globe. We are grateful for Reverend Jonas's safe journey here and the time we have to share with him. Be with us now as we learn and grow together. Amen. Reverend Jonas, welcome again to Little River, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much, Shelley. It's nice to be here, and it's nice to see you. And also from my side, a little welcome, and thanks for coming, and thanks for joining online. And yeah, I'm happy you're interested in what I'm telling to you now. So, I have done a little presentation. There are a lot of pictures, but I want to say if you have any questions, just raise your hand, and then I answer them, or I will say I come to that later.
If you do have a question before the end, let me give you the microphone so that those online can hear.
So, you already see a nice picture of a church. It's a church right across from the street where I live. So it's the nearest church for me. And yeah, let us start. I want to start with a little introduction. How do you become a pastor in Germany? First, you got to get your Abitur. That's the high school diploma equivalent in Germany. So you have to get your Abitur and you have to go to university. But you have the choice, you have 3 ways to become a pastor. And the intended route, the normal way to become a pastor, is to study theology at the university. And it's a normal major, it's a typical, not typical, normal major. At the university, at the state university, there are not many private universities in Germany. Typically, you go to a state university, and it's one of the 3 traditional subjects. There was like law, medicine, and theology back in the day. Or you could go the side way and study Gemeindepädagogik. That's church educational work. You can get ordained to be a pastor when you do that also. And there are only a few universities where you can study that, like, for example, in Berlin. And it's a lot more practical. Or you could do it the 3rd way, when you're not a member of the big Protestant church, but of we call it free church, like a Baptist church or a Methodist church. You go usually to a private university of that specific denomination. So, studying theology, I don't know if it's any different in the US, but when you start with it, it's very hard because the first thing you have to do is to learn the languages. Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. And it's not just you have to look at it a little bit, and you have to do an exam on an Abitur level. That's like on a high school level, and it takes a year for Greek and a year for Latin, and usually half a year for Hebrew. So a lot of people stop studying when these languages come up because they can't do the exams, it's too hard for them, or they just have really no fun in them. But that's sad, because I think we lose some good pastors who are not just so good in the languages. You have to plan at least 6 years for theology, because it's not, they didn't change it. We got the bachelor's master's degrees in Germany like 10 years ago, and they said it's no good for theology because we want pastors who do the whole thing, and you still have a diploma. The problem is all the important exams are at the end. So you studied 6 years, and then comes the hard part, and if you fail, you lose 6 years, at least. So we are all very nervous when it comes to the last year. You got the typical disciplines, I think, of theology: Old Testament, New Testament, church history, systematic theology, practical theology, and sometimes more like religious studies. And you end your studies with a degree, you get a diploma or church exam. I got both, because if you want to become a pastor, you have to take the exam at your church. But my university, they said, well, or our church said, well, the diploma is good enough, so you can do the diploma and you get the church exam. But at some universities, you only do one of them. Or yeah, I did it and got both. So that's nice, because yeah, you got an official university diploma. So congratulations, you got your erstes kirchliches Examen, your first church exam. But normally we don't do the head throwing part in Germany. It's very unusual. I never saw anyone doing it. So here comes one of the hard parts. It's hard to understand, I think, even for some of our church members. When you want to become a pastor, you have to choose between one of the state churches. We still call them state churches, because until around 100 years ago, the head of the state, of the political state, was also the head of the church. And it was like that. And so they kept it, but they also kept the borders. But the political borders changed over the years, but the church borders didn't change. So we got, yeah, that thing sometimes we call it something like Flickenteppich, a little patchwork. So there are 20 state churches in Germany, and I'm in the one which is a little striped in the middle. But they were two until 10 years ago, but they did merging, so out of two state churches became one state church. And they developed historically, but yeah, it's difficult because these are not the political borders of the states anymore. So here you can compare the church borders on the left. These are all the Protestant church borders, and on the right you got the political state borders. So you see, it's not always the same. And that makes it difficult, because sometimes, most of the times, our church members, they don't even know what state church they are in. And when they know it, they think it's the same as the political border, but that's not the case. So when you finished your first exam, your first church exam, and you want to become a pastor, you got to decide for one state church. Usually it's the one you grew up in, or you are from, or your partner is from. And then you have to do 2.5 years practical work, and that's called the second church exam. The first you do half a year of teaching at a school, because religion is a subject in German schools. So we teach at public schools most of the time. For half a year, we do a little exam in that. And then there are 2 years working with a mentor. You look what he's doing and you're learning from him. And step by step, you're given more and more things to do, and you learn how to do a baptism, you learn how to do a funeral. And yeah, it's really step by step and looking what your mentor's doing. And while doing that, you also go to the Prediger seminar. Maybe the equivalent is a seminary. So we go there for a year. It's usually 1 week every month. I went to Wittenberg. It's a very famous city. So we got a nice Prediger seminar there. And we went there with 3 other state churches, with young people doing the vicariat. So we met there and we could talk how it is in our state church and what are the differences in your state church. And at the end, you're graduating with a second church exam, das zweite kirchliche Examen. You have to do one project in your congregation and write 30 pages about it. You have to do one 6-hour exam, and you have to do a lot of oral exams. And that's also a hard time, but when you finish that, when you've done that, you get ordained. Congratulations. So that's a picture of my ordination, where I got ordained. It was in Magdeburg, in Magdeburger Dom. It's a big cathedral, an important cathedral in our state church. And we are there. It's not everyone is from the second church exam. There are some who volunteer as pastors. They do it in their free time, in their spare time. But they also got to do exams, and they got ordained with us. And we are one of a few state churches where you get ordained when you do it as a volunteer. Because most of the state churches, they don't ordain you, so you can celebrate communion or baptize someone. Yeah, and then I finished all of that, and then I became a pastor. And that's a big thing in a lot of villages, because most of the times there's only one. And it depends where you are in Germany, he's either Protestant or he's Catholic. Most of the free churches, we call them free churches, they are in the cities. But in the rural area, it's worth an article in the local newspaper where I got interviewed, and they took a picture of me, and yeah, I was welcomed. And it's a little strange, because you have to get used to it. You're suddenly a person of the public life. The people notice you, and they look at you, and they say, "Oh, that's the pastor, that's our new pastor." And yeah, I heard that all the time. And that's where I work and live now. You see, it's in the eastern part of Germany. We call it Central Germany because Germany was bigger a few years ago, and it was the central part, and there were a lot of eastern parts, but we don't have those eastern parts anymore. So we are Eastern Germany now, but we call ourselves Middle Germany because Eastern Germany is often connected with the former state of Eastern Germany. Yeah, and that's a close-up of the region I'm working in, and all the markings you see are the churches I'm responsible for. And you see, in the middle there is a city. It has like 30,000 people living there, but I'm in the south and in the east, so we call it pastoral region. My pastoral region is called Weißenfels Südost. But a lot of people call it Langendorf because the village I live in is named Langendorf. And usually when you're a pastor in Germany, you live in a parsonage. And you have no say in it, you have to do it. And you have to take one, even if it's a big one like the one my wife and we live in, I would say it's too big for us, but yeah, when I wanted to work there, I had to take the parsonage. But some congregations, they sold it, and the pastors are free to look where they want to live. That's the backside of the parsonage. There's a lot of space, and it's important for later, so you will see. And that's a little view from the top, because you see that little church. It's one of the 4 churches in Langendorf, in the village. The village has around 2,000 people living in it. It's between 2,000 and 3,000, I think. And the building you see on the left and on the bottom, you see it's cut in half. In the left side, there's a family living, and the right side is the building where our secretary has her office in, and we have some rooms to do something like we do today. We usually don't do that in our churches because it's too cold and too dark. And I want to show you a few of the churches I'm responsible for. This one is the youngest one, I think, and it's very big. It's in a village called Granschütz. And there's a lot of building going on because the old buildings, they start to crumble and to fall apart, and we have to invest a lot of energy that we can keep them like they are. And we are working on giving this church a new roof, but it costs us, we are planning with around €500,000, so but the church belongs to a congregation of 90 people. That's the inside of the church. You see, it's pretty full, but it's because it's on a day we call Martinstag. It's the day of the Saint Martin. It's not Martin Luther, it's a saint which he cut his mantelpiece in half and gave it to a poor man. And in Germany, it's tradition on that day that the children go on the street with lanterns and sing songs. And sometimes we finish that walk in the church where they did a little program, and yeah, sometimes there's something to eat. And this is the oldest church I'm responsible for. It's around 800 years old. And it got a new roof already, but it was before I came there. And that's the inside of it. It got a very nice altar. And yeah. So the churches I work in are very different. And this church has a congregation of around 20 to 30 members. And there's another church. I just wanted to show you the variety because it has a very nice interior. That's our church organ. Yeah, but it's not working so good anymore because the organs are very costly, and they also, when you don't invest money every year, they fall apart step by step, and it's very difficult to keep them, like they are, and playable. The most important part is playable. That's another church, and the inside, it's very beautiful. We got Thanksgiving there. It's like, what did we say? Harvest celebration, more of a harvest celebration. So we collect some stuff and we give it to people who can use it. In this case, it was a women's shelter. And we got a special church in Langendorf too. This was a monastery church, but in the former Eastern Germany, there was the farmers. The farmers were pressured to join the communists kind of. They made a really big one out of it. So not much families. So they all sort of joined forces and did it together. But it was not the best for the church. We have a nice service in there. You see, it was one of my colleagues. She got youth pastor for our association, But you see the walls are not looking very nice. It's because the farmers, they took the church from the congregation and they made hooks on the walls and ropes, and they dried tobacco in it. So yeah, the church got damaged pretty hard. And we had a little association who cared about the church and wanted to make the walls nice again, but our local monument protection official, he said, well, it's charming in this church, so you don't, yes, so we keep it like this. And normally they are looking all the time that we keep everything nice. And here he said, well, that's what makes this church special. So they didn't change the walls. And when you're on a village, there are a lot of things going on, and you are expected to be there. And the first thing, when I got there 2 years ago on Easter, and in Germany it's a big tradition to do a little Easter fires. Yeah, and I don't know why, where it came from, but they do it, and a lot of people are going there, and they do some games there, which are hard to explain for me now, so maybe do it another time, but it's pretty funny, because I didn't know that game before I came to the village. So they call it the World Cup, because only they do it, so it has to be the World Cup. And this is the backside of the property of the parsonage, because when I moved there was a little, we call it Vereine, and I think the best word to translate it is association, sort of association, like non-profit, small associations for certain purposes. And the purpose of this association is to party. So they asked my wife and me, they asked us when we moved there, yeah, we're doing a little party there every year. And it developed when there was my predecessor, and they were always having big parties because some of them, they were young people, and they had birthday they celebrated their birthday in the same month, so they made a big thing out of it. And it got bigger and bigger, so they founded this association, and they had to move to another property, and my predecessor, he was very beloved, and they knocked on his door, and they asked him, do you have any idea? And he said, yeah, come on my property, we do it here. So it became a tradition, and they play hard rock music for a weekend. And there are people sleeping in tents on the property, and they have a lot of fun, and there's a lot of alcohol and partying, like deep in the night. And this is like 2 a.m. But it's a part of it. You know, a lot of the people are not in the church, not in the congregation, but they sort of like the pastor anyway, and they like to talk to him. And like I said, you're a public figure in the village, so you see a lot of things in the village, and you're expected to be there. But one nice thing is on the Sunday of the festival, we have a little family service, and a lot of people are coming. A lot of people that normally don't go to service, and after the service, they have a tradition of presenting a little fairy tale. The older teenagers, they are learning to do a fairy tale, and they present it. They play a little play for the smaller children. And you see the property is highly used, oftentimes used. This is in the Advent, a little Christmas market. And as a pastor, you have to participate in all sorts of events. And we have a big carnival culture in Germany. And this year we got invited to it, and we went for the first time. And it's very special if you're not used to it, because there's a lot of things going on. You see, it's very loud and very colorful, and but it's fun. And we try to use our or many churches to give them to associations to use them for certain days or things like that. And this is a day there was an association. We got a lot of associations in Germany. Like nearly every citizen in Germany is an association. So, or a lot of times in a few of them, in a handful of them. So there was this association, and they always go to different towns and villages, and they do a diversity day. It's like a nature diversity day. And there they showed a lot of apples in the church. It smelled very good. And you can go there, and they would look at your apple and say which sort it is. So you can get it, figured out. And we try to do special services so more people come, because not a lot of people come to the service in our churches. On a regular Sunday, it's between 10 and 20 people per church, because oftentimes I do 2 services a Sunday, and we try to have some more special services, so the people say, well, it's special, it looks nice, so we can go there. So this was Ascension. You have Ascension? Yeah, it's a big holiday in Germany, and so we said, well, if it's Ascension, we do it under the sky. And a lot of people come when it's a special event. And I did this with a pastor in a town nearby. And it's always nice to have a colleague on your side and do it together. Because sometimes, it's difficult, because that's why I say it, because this is one of the colleagues where we have, not every village and every town has its own town or village council. Sometimes they are part of a bigger city nearby. But my region is so big that I have 4 political regions in my region. So there are a few villages belonging to this city and a few villages belonging to this city. And this is a colleague where she's in a small town where a few of my villages belong to. So some of the people, they go to her, but they live in my village just because they think, well, it's the bigger town, so I go there. So, one of the last pictures, this was this year. As a church, we try to be progressive and to be a place for people to go and be accepted. And especially in Eastern Germany, we have a right-wing party on the rise in the last 10 years. And we try to stand against it and be a place where everyone is welcome. So I went to do you call it demonstration? I went to a demonstration with a few colleagues because there was a big uproar in Germany because there was a secret meeting of the right-wing party where they talked about deporting people out of the country who they don't see as German enough or political opposing political views. So they talked about deporting them. And that caused a big uproar in Germany, so there were demonstrations, and we as a church, we said we have to go there. And that's a banner from our church. It says, Herz statt Hetze. It means something like heart instead of hate speech. And right above there's a small text, Nächstenliebe verlangt Klarheit. It translates like loving your neighbor needs clarity. So it was nice to see a lot of colleagues there. This is in the background you see the church of Weißenfels of the city. I live 5 minutes. I need to drive 5 minutes, so I'm in there. But there's another pastor responsible. So in our church, we live pretty close. But it was even closer 30 years ago. My predecessor said he was like, in the next village there was another pastor, and in the next village. But I think having a colleague in 10 to 15 minutes is pretty nice. So a few facts about the circumstances of my work. In Eastern Germany, and I looked it up, in the region I work in, only 15% of the population are members of a church. Not of my church, but of a church. So they are Protestant or Catholic or go to another congregation, only 15%. And you see, the average in Germany is 41.4%. So we are below the average by a lot. And why is that? It's because the communist government suppressed the church and replaced some of our rituals. For example, there is something called Jugendweihe. And I've done it too because I only went to the church in my later teenage years. And a lot of young people are doing it. It's what the church calls confirmation. And the communist government said, well, we want to suppress the church, but they are strong in their rituals. So we have to form our own rituals. And one of it was Jugendweihe. It's literally translated, it's youth consecration. And that went pretty well. They were pretty successful in replacing the rituals and having new youth organizations and everything, where you have to be part in, or you were questioned. They questioned you, why aren't you coming to our event, and what are you doing? And the problem is, if you weren't in the communist youth organization, they asked you questions, and they didn't let you get your high school diploma. We have different school graduations. Like there's one below the high school diploma, and you can do it nowadays too. But you need the high school diploma to go to university. So you had to apply for the high school to get your Abitur. But when they thought you're critical against the government or you are too tight with your church, they said you're not allowed to go to high school. So that worked. So the people said, well, then I quit church so I can do that, and maybe I even join the party because then I can do even more, and I'm on the sure side. So I'm sure I can study, and that worked. But the church got around that they sort of got their own schools, their own high schools. So you could do your 2 years for your Abitur, you could do it at church, but you couldn't go to university with it, but you could study theology, which the churches provided. They provided this major. So you needed to make a church high school diploma, and then you could study theology and could become a pastor. And a lot of older pastors did that. They often tell me, well, I wanted to become a physician, a mathematician, and I wasn't allowed, so I became a pastor because theology was the only thing I was allowed to study. And another reason why the people leave the church is, in Germany you have to pay church taxes if you are a member of the church. And that means that the government takes 7 to 10% of your income taxes. That's the price they add. So you pay your income taxes, but I say 10% of that you also pay, but that goes directly to the church. But the government takes it for the church. That's has historic reasons, but it's also a win-win situation because the government takes a small amount of that for doing it, so they get some money from it, and the church gets the money and doesn't have to take it themselves. So, a lot of young people, when they realize they go to work and the government is taking a small amount of their money for their church and they don't go to church anymore, they leave the church. So, yeah, you have a reason to leave, and you can just keep being a member on paper because you always pay for it. So, yeah, those are a lot of reasons why people left the church. And yeah, even on a regular Sunday, only 1 to 2% of the church members visit a service. That's the average, 1 or 2%. And to give you some numbers, in 2022, that's the latest numbers we have, because the numbers of 2023, they still have to count it. And in 2022, the Protestant church in Germany lost 380,000 members. And we only gained around 20,000 members in whole Germany. So in 2022, the Protestant church had 19,150,000 members in Germany. But in my region and in Eastern Germany, we have only a few percentage of that. And sometimes the people ask, yeah, why are the churches crumbling? We are paying church taxes and everything. And it's not on my presentation, but I like to say that because in Eastern Germany we have a rich history and a rich church history. And my state church has 1/3 of the churches in Germany, but we have 1 or 2% of the church members in Germany. So yeah, it doesn't really add up. We have a lot of buildings. And another fact is all Protestant churches are working as parishes. There is no pastor, there is always a pastor responsible everywhere you live. That's a system, it also came from history, so it doesn't matter where you live. Normally you have a Protestant pastor who's responsible for you if you are a member of the church. So everywhere you move, there is someone responsible for you. And we work in this parish system. My daily life. How's my daily life looking? I have 15 churches organized in 2 merged church councils and 1 small village church council. Now, what does that mean? It means normally a congregation in my state church has to be theoretically only 4 people, because the condition is you have to have 4 people for church council. So if you have 4 people and they are also doing the church council, you have a congregation. But over the time, the villages and the small towns, they couldn't find enough people wanting to do church council, so they got together and they said, well, my village and your village, we can work together, we can have 1 church council. And they also did that over the time with structural changes. And they said, well, there are too few people for 1 pastor, so he needs more, so we add another church, so he has more members for his church, a bigger congregation, but usually they don't visit the service in the next village. Yeah, we got so they merged, and I got now 3 bigger church councils. It's like 10 people per council. And I only got 1 village left where they found 4 people, and they said, we are willing to do this alone, and they still do their church council only for their village. Yeah, I got only a few volunteers per church. And that's pretty hard, because sometimes there's only 1 person with a key saying, I organize everything, and that's hard for them. And sometimes they don't even really want to do it because they say it's too much responsibilities and I don't have that time, and there's no one willing to work with me so we can do it together. So sometimes there are a lot of hopes into the pastor that he can change it. He can find volunteers or he can do it by himself, but it's not possible. Yeah, I got 2 pastors nearby, and I got 1 church musician, but I share him with these 2 pastors nearby. So our musician, he has I think he has 30 churches where he plays in, but so I only see him every few weeks. Yeah, sometimes even I don't see him for 2 or 3 months. So we have a lot of volunteer musicians. And we have one church educator. He's doing the work with we have 2 church educators in our region, but I only work with one of them, and he's doing the work with the children and the youth. But we work together as a region. We call it region. It's not an official thing in our church, but it's so we can jump in if somebody's going on vacation or if someone needs help. So we meet every month and we talk about it. Yeah, do you need help? What do we need to do? And we plan some things together, because when we have a confirmation class, I don't know if you call it confirmation class, but we said it's a bit boring for them if they go to one pastor and there are only 4, and sitting with them and talking about things, it could be a bit boring. So we put 3 pastoral regions together to do this confirmation class, and so there are more teenagers and they have a little more fun, and we can put our energy together to do this. And sometimes we want to do this more, putting our energy together and working together, but not everyone wants that in the villages, because they fear they get overlooked. Yeah, we got different groups, like senior groups or groups of children and of youth. Like we got a children's church, we call it, our church educator is doing, and a teenagers church. He meets with them once a week or once every 2 weeks, and they do some things together. And oftentimes we are organized in these groups. And now the numbers are interesting, because for my pastoral region, I got around 900 to 1,000 church members. And those are the ones paying church tax. But a lot of them never show up. So I don't see them, and you could say, well, that's a lot of people, because your church, you don't have as much people, but on your Sunday service, a lot more people are showing up, and so that's different. We got a lot of members on paper, but very, very few are showing up, and I only know very few of them. But one of the things that are expected from a pastor in rural areas is to do a thing called birthday visits, and oftentimes it's the pastor visits only the older people. Sometimes they say, well, everyone above 80, but I said, well, I think everyone deserves this, and it's a good opportunity to get to know the people I only see on paper, and I have a list with every one of them, because we get that from our city office. So sometimes government and church are working together when it comes to this, and I got a list with all the 1,000 members, and sometimes I just take a look who's celebrating birthday today, and I drive there and I say happy birthday, and oftentimes you get invited and eat some cake, and it's very funny, because you sit there, you don't know anybody sometimes, but they are very welcoming, and they talk with you and ask you questions. So you are the new pastor, and it's a good occasion to get to know people. But it can be hard, because some congregations they expect you to visit a lot of people on their birthday, and that's a lot of work. So I'm doing a lot of construction matters. We got a lot of church buildings, and the people want to keep their churches. And but it's not really what I learned. But I already learned a lot. But sometimes I say to them, "You got a pastor. I studied theology. If you want me to build to preserve our churches all the time, you should have gotten an engineer and not a theologian. So, but my predecessor, he was very good at building. He was very interested in it, and he learned it all. And yeah, so some like it. And important dates in our year are Easter, Thanksgiving, Sunday of the Dead, it is called, it's in November, where we remember everyone who died in the past year. And then there's Christmas, and Christmas is a nice holiday because almost all of our churches are full. A lot of people are going to Christmas service, even people who are not members of the church. It's a big tradition in Germany to go to church on Christmas Eve. So yeah, we got full churches, and that is nice. But I got a lot of work because on Easter I was doing 6 services, 3 on Easter Sunday and 3 on Easter Monday, and on Christmas usually I do 4 services. So, but the thing is, sometimes it's a little sad because this Easter I got a lot of work, and you're pretty exhausted, and you're going home, and that was a lot. And then there's the Tuesday coming after Easter, and I think, well, that was Easter, so it went by very quick. I was only working. And that's sad because you want to celebrate the holiday and got some time for your family, but when you're doing so much services, you only have very little time for your family. So I'm working with different associations, different Vereine, like with the festival, or we got an association in one of our villages who's caring about the church building. They want to keep it, and they're doing concerts once a month. So yeah, you have to do that, and it's nice to do it, but sometimes I would wish more of the people who are in the part of the church, because I'm working with a lot of associations outside of the church. And yeah, because we have declining numbers over the last decades, we have a structural changes every 10 to 20 years. And we are working on it now, and it means we are getting less pastors in this region, and we have to look if we are reducing our staff. And I'm dealing with a lot of frustration and grief, because people used to know better times. They said, well, 30 years ago, we had our own pastor, or we had our own confirmation class, our own Sunday school, and they are not willing to drive their children. Even it's a 10-minute ride, they say, we want it in our village, because back in the day it was in our village, so we want that back. And I say, well, we don't have enough members to do that. We don't have the money for the staff to do it. And yeah, that's pretty hard, because sometimes you're, as a pastor, you're missing some, you want to do something new and not just look how the past looked like and look optimistic what the future maybe could look like. But it also means I got a lot of freedom and space for ideas, because a lot of structures are not working anymore, and the people are always welcoming you trying something new. So yeah. And we are always looking for new ways for church to exist, and we are thinking about what does the future look like. And we don't have any answers, and we don't really have a vision, I would say. Yeah, sometimes I'm missing a vision, what could it look like? But sometimes I have the feeling the buildings are standing in our way, because the people want to keep their church building. And so they are also not willing to drive. But sometimes I say, it would be nicer we have one service for the whole region where I'm working in, and we would be 50 people in the service and not doing 2 or 3 services, and each time there are 10 to 15 people. But they don't want to do it. So just a little something to our church organization, and then I come to the question and answers. Yeah, I already said 15 churches organized into church councils. Yeah, I got something mixed up here, I see. Yeah, I missed to delete the first part, the first half of the presentation. But if you're looking at the second half of the presentation, that's what I wanted to talk about. We are organized as a state church. In German, it means Landeskirche. When from back in the day, when what I said, the head of the state was head of the church, and we are still organized that way, but we don't have political head of the state who is head of the church. And we are organized now from bottom to top. We have our church councils, and the church council elects a member for the higher level. That's called Kirchenkreis. It's like a church circle, literally, but it would be, I think, association in the UCC. So the church council elects a member for the Kreissynode, for the association synod, and the association synod elects a member for the Landessynode, for the state church synod. So it goes from bottom to top. And on every level, our law is to have more volunteers than church staff. So we are not a church of clergies, you would say. So we are a church of the people, of the volunteers, of our members. And a special thing compared to how you are organized is pastors are employed by the Landeskirche as civil servants. It's like civil servants, because we are not a body of the state anymore, but the church is still a little bit organized like it. So in Germany, churches can have a special status. It's called Körperschaft des öffentlichen Rechts, and literally it means body of the public law. And you can get a body of the public law, and if you do that, you get certain rights. And one of those rights is you can employ the people working for you like civil servants. That means it's pretty hard to fire you. So I have, after my probation time, I'm in probation time still. So not everything is now working for me. So, but I don't have to pay into the public retirement system, but we have a pension system with our church. Not everyone likes it, but it is what it is. And also you are allowed to get health insurance, a private health insurance. Usually in Germany, you aren't allowed to get private health insurance until you earn a certain kind of money or you are a public servant. But we are allowed to do that, but a lot of us decide against it and say we go with the public health care because it's a solidarity system. I did that. So that was a lot. Do you have questions? And I will gladly answer them. I could talk about a lot of things still, but I had to make a cut somewhere. Thank you very much.
Of the 20 state churches that you mentioned,
Yeah.
Your preaching, for example, would it be similar to another state church, or would your theology be somewhat different from another state church?
Yeah, we can take a quick look again into the presentation. So I need to see my, thank you very much. When I go back to the state churches, it was right at the beginning. You can see there are different colors. But the different colors are not the different state churches, because you see there are borders between them. The different colors are different organizations, theological organizations. You see the Church of Central Germany, Mitteldeutschland, it says there's a striped color. That's because around 10 years ago we merged two state churches into one. And we were in different theological organizations. And there are two very big ones. One is the Vereinigte Evangelisch-Lutherische Kirche Deutschlands. It's VELKD, and these are the Lutherans. And then you see, that's the darker color. And then you see a little bit brighter color, and that's the Unierte Evangelische Kirche, I think. Yeah. That's a union of Protestant churches. And the union evolved from the Prussian Church Union. That's what I'm talking about next week, where Lutherans and Reformed churches merged together under one roof, and they called themselves Union. And the northern part of our state church, when we merged, the northern part was member of the Union, and the southern part is the Church of Thüringen. The southern part was part of the Lutheran Church, so that's why you see the stripes, because now our church is in both organizations. And you see on the bottom there's one state church who doesn't belong to one of those two organizations and is only a guest in those two organizations. And on the top left, you see there's also a bright spot, and there's a big portion of the people there are Reformed. And in Germany, there's also a Reformed organization, but it's pretty small, and it's called Reformierter Bund. Literally, it means Reformed Covenant. And this is the organization of the Reformed Christians in Germany. Yeah. So we got theological differences, but in my state church you don't really feel them as much. When we get ordained, we have to decide on which creed we want to be ordained. If we want to get ordained on the Lutheran creeds, on the Reformed creeds, or on the Unionist creeds. That means Reformed and Lutheran creeds. So we have to decide that, and I chose the Reformed creeds, but I'm working in a Lutheran environment, but yeah, nobody really cares. It's not, the people don't take that too seriously, I think, in my part of the country. There are other parts where it makes a huge difference. So, but since the 70s, we are allowed to preach in each church, and we also we celebrate communion together. It only started in the 70s. It's called Leuenberger Concordia, and I think it's working on a world level. There are a lot of churches of the world, in the world that signed this paper, and so since the 70s, as a Reformed, you can go to the Lutherans and participate in the communion. But it was not, it was on paper. It was not always that strictly. Like in the Union, nobody really cared because it was a union.
Different services usually on a Sunday.
Yeah.
But so, like, do you do 3 different churches each week, or if you want to go to a church service, you have to drive to get to a service? How do you reach all 15? How do you?
Usually, we make a plan when we have church council. We look at our schedule, and I ask the councils, when do you want to have your service? And some churches, they don't even want a service every week, or sometimes not even every month. And they say, well, in the winter it's too cold for us, so we don't need it. But they usually only a few of them drive to another village for service.
So like people don't take your place or something when you're not there.
Yeah. Sometimes. I have one, when I showed you the oldest church, I have lay people, volunteers there. They said, we want a service every first Sunday of the month, and if our pastor can make it, we do it ourselves. So that's possible, but only a few people are willing to do this. So yeah, I'm doing 2 or 3 services a weekend, and yeah, we decide in church council when I go where.
I had a question that went back to your map. So you used brighter or dark or blue or purple? I mean, I guess that's
Yeah.
what you were saying, right?
That was what I was saying, but I'm colorblind, so
Oh,
it's easier for me. You know, with red and green, I have my problems, and purple has red in it, so I didn't want to say anything wrong, so I just said bright or dark.
Sorry, I was just
No problem.
confused by that.
There are some questions from online participants.
So from, I presume, Drew, but it could be Susan Nettinga, 2 questions. First, you live in a parsonage while you are serving churches. When you retire, does the state provide you with a place to live? And number 2, do churches take an offering during worship in addition to the taxes they pay to support the church?
I didn't really understand the second question, but I can answer the first question first. They don't provide you anything. So when you are retiring, you have to look where you go. The church, they help you for moving. They help you with finding not with finding a company, but with paying a moving company. That's what I was saying. So, but you have to take a look. Yeah, like my predecessor, he looked around and they had to buy a house. So, yeah, you don't get anything provided.
And the second question was, do you receive donations outside of the church tax?
Yeah. Yeah, we receive donations like we have in service, we have offering, but once a year we write a letter to every church member where we ask for donations, but sometimes we do that, we don't really want to do that, or we have a bad feeling because a lot of people are complaining about it. They say, well, I'm already paying church tax and now you want even more. But when the difference is from your church tax, some of it goes to the whole organization for all the levels and for all the work that has to be done. It's important, but not everything goes to your congregation in your village. So the letter we write, everything you donate, it comes directly to the congregation. So there's not this whole other stuff you pay for, but you only donate to what's happening at your place. So that's a difference. But sometimes people even donate just so they donate, they can donate all the time, and some of them do it, but most of it is from church taxes, because the people are not willing to pay so much more than the church taxes.
A few more online. Robin Petrusak asks, is the Catholic Church membership and attendance dwindling as the Protestant churches are?
It's very difficult for me to understand.
Is Catholic church membership declining along with Protestant membership?
Yeah. Both big churches have very declining numbers. And I just wanted to say something again to the church tax, because some people want to get rid of it, or some people say, I would still be member of the church if it wasn't for church tax. But oftentimes I say, if we wouldn't have church taxes, you would pay a lot more, because it's like 7 to 10% of your income tax. That means if you're earning a lot of money, it's like 500 euros a year. But I think it's a just system, because if you are earning less money, it's 50 euros a year, it's 100 euros a year. And I think it's an okay price, because if we wouldn't have that, I know in the US it's some congregations, they used to tithe, and that's a lot. That's a lot, spending 10% of your whole income, not just 10% of your income tax, but 10% of your income. That's a lot, but in Germany we don't have a big culture of donating, because we have a culture of the state and the government providing for everything. So if you lose your job, you get insurance, and I mean, you pay for it all the time you are working, but the insurance doesn't run out. So the government always provides you. You have housing, and they pay for your electricity bills, and they pay for your water bills. So there's not a big donating culture, because a lot of people say, I'm giving a lot away with taxes and everything, and the government is providing, so there is no need to donate to someone, because everyone can apply to insurance. Like how you call it when you lose your job, the insurance is unemployment. Yeah, you can always apply for unemployment, so there's no need to give someone money on the street.
Also online, Larry Roth asks, is there very much use of social media in German churches, and is there very much streaming of church services?
No. No, we tried it when the pandemic hit us, but yeah, I think the German culture is a lot more skeptical of using social media and the internet. I don't have social media, so sometimes we are trying it at church, and I have colleagues who try it, who say, well, it's good for the people to see what we are doing, and I think it's good. I just don't want to support the social media company behind it. So, but streaming, also some congregations used it in the pandemic, but a lot of them in Germany got rid of it as soon as the pandemic officially ended, and went back to what it was before, and yeah, didn't kept it. But yeah, I think there could be a big use in it, so the people don't have to drive so much, but yeah, there's not much willingness.
And final question online for now, at least. How long will it take for you to reach what sounds very much like tenure?
Very much like?
Tenure.
That you're employed for life.
Yeah, when you're becoming a pastor, at first you're doing your vicariat, so your 2.5 practical years, and after that, when you really become a pastor, in my state church, you are employed like a civil servant, but you are on a kind of probation. We call it Entsendungsdienst, but that's an old name. But you are on a probation for 3 years, and after that 3 years, you can apply for the congregation you are already in, or for a different congregation. And your superintendent, that's the person above me in hierarchy, she has to approve of what I've done in the past 3 years, and have to write something for the state church. And when you get past that 3 years and apply for your job or a different job, usually the state church employs you for life.
Okay. Sorry. This week, our Little Rivers strategic planning team is talking about buildings and grounds issues here at Little River. And I guess I've been thinking about that. And so that made me wonder, how does all the work get done in all of your churches to take care of the grounds outside and the insides, and things that are smaller than construction issues?
We always try to find some volunteers, because sometimes people volunteer, they have nothing to do with church, but they say, well, someone has to do it, so I will do it. Yeah, but it's yeah, it's not good organized, and I have in my responsibility I have 4 cemeteries that we still own as a church, as a congregation, and for a long time there was in Germany when we still had as a young man you had to go to the army for 1.5 years, but they got rid of that like 10 years ago or something. I didn't have to go, but you could say I don't want to go to the army, but you had to do some civil work, community service, right? That's what you call it. And for a lot of times, when we still had that, there were like 2 young men doing the community service, and they trimmed the grass on the cemetery, and until a few years ago there was something. It's called Arbeitsbeschaffungsmaßnahme. It's when people were, like I said, when you need unemployment insurance. There was something like the government wanted that you showed at least interest in getting a job or in doing some work, and or they would cut a piece of your insurance money, of your unemployment insurance, and they would sometimes come up and said you have to do community service to show you are willing to work. And the church was profiting of it in taking these people and saying, well, you can do it with us, and you can trim the grass on the cemetery and cut the bushes and everything. But they got rid of that a few years ago. So when I started, it was a really bad situation with our cemeteries, because there was no one caring for it, and we were really helpless. And what can we do? And now we found someone who is... He want to start a company, and he does it, but it costs us money, and we have to put it on the cemetery fee, and not everyone is happy about it. But I said no one is willing to do it for free, so we have to do something, or we can shut down the cemeteries. But in Germany, when you shut down a cemetery, you still have to care for it for like 30 years. So it doesn't change anything if I would say we close it tomorrow, because I still have to care for it the next 30 years. So yeah, but I think that's a cultural thing in Germany too. A lot of people expect, I'm paying something, so you have to care for it. I'm paying my taxes, so the state has to provide for me, or the government has to provide for me. And like I said, and sometimes that's not even good, because you could say, well, everyone can apply for unemployment, but there are still homeless people, and there are many reasons to be homeless. So it's still good to donate something, but a lot of people still say, well, they just could apply for unemployment. Yeah, but there are many reasons why you can be homeless. So it's hard, because there's always... The people always want you to provide something, and very few are willing to help by themselves, to volunteer and to do something. And sometimes it's hard, because we always are looking out for volunteers, and very few people are willing to do it. And we are very, very thankful for everyone who does it.
Hi, my name is Tom Johnson. I'm a retired Foreign Service officer, and we were in Frankfurt. I was an American consul in Frankfurt in 1984 to 88, and our 2 sons were very much involved in Scouts. And one day they came to me and said, gee, the German Scouts have invited us to join them for a jamboree, but we need a bus. And so I went to headquarters of the Army, and I said, can I get a bus from you for the weekend? They said, what for? And I told them, and they said, oh, sure, no problem. So we met our group of scouts together at headquarters of the Army, and went off to meet this bunch of German scouts. What I didn't tell them was scouting in Germany is not like in the United States.
Yeah.
It's boys and girls.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
And it's
So
also
we pulled
not
up
that
to the
big.
church, and I get this gas from about 40 scouts. The girls, we're not camping with girls. And I said, oh, yes, you are. Because if you are, I'm going to your father, who's a colonel, is a good friend of mine, and he can make life very, very unpleasant for you. I said, all right, we'll go. The weekend, the German Girl Scouts outdid the American Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, in every possible sport. And they were very impressed with the sporting ability of the German Girl Scouts, and because their boys and girls were together, whereas in the United States it's quite separated.
Still, is it still separated? They're together now? Not everywhere. It depends where you are. Yeah, but scouting in general is not as big in Germany. I think in the US it's a pretty big thing. In Germany, I don't think it's so big. I only saw scouts a few times.
So, I sound map obsessed, but back to your map. How much distance, really, in terms of times or miles or kilometers, like from the furthest church, in your district, your 15 churches, how much distance does that represent?
Most of the times I just drive from my house to these churches. I only on rare occasions I drive from one end to the other because it takes a lot of time. But from my house, the furthest is 15 minutes. What?
Okay. Well, then the idea of 15 churches and distances so small, it just...
Distances are small. Sometimes you can even look at... but sometimes you look across the field and you see the next church. It would be a walk for like you would walk 10 minutes, but yeah.
Yeah, maintaining all those old buildings. Whoa.
Yeah, and I think maybe from one end to the other of my area that I'm responsible for, it's 25 minutes, I think. Yeah, but that's no distance in the US, right? I think a lot of people drive a lot longer to come here every Sunday. Sometimes that's what I say. Say it's only a 10-minute drive to bring your child to child church, but they say, well, I have to drive my kid to sports and to musical school and everything, and they make the cut with the church. And sometimes they say that to me. They say, well, I drive them so much, I have to make a cut somewhere. And that's then sorry for you, but I make the cut at church.
Going back online, question from Joanne Zellers. Do you offer adult education or Bible studies for adults?
Yeah, we try. We have a meeting once a month at the moment where we try to like a group, like you do, like we did yesterday, where we speak about certain topics, and I oftentimes ask what the people want for topics, but we are maybe 5 to 8 people. Yeah, and it's when you look at the numbers, when you look at 900 to 1,000 members, and you make a meeting and there are 5 people showing up, it's not much.
And just to be clear, this is all in person, no Zoom.
Yes. I don't think in the 2 years I'm there I did one Zoom meeting for the congregation. We did it as colleagues. Oftentimes we did it as colleagues because we said, well, we can save the driving time and just meet online. Or when someone said, well, I can't really make it, but I can go on Zoom. But for the congregation, I think I never used it in those 2 years. Thank you very much.
One last question.
One last question.
I was just curious, with whether you have 6 churches you're responsible for, or 16 or whatever, are they enough like so that you could care for them together, or do you have to separate them into different groups and deal with them separately?
I don't really understand the question.
She's asking if you can do the same sermon for all of them, or do the same classes for all of them, or if you have to separate it out.
Yeah. In my area, we try to, when we have group meetings, like when we have a Bible study, we try to do one for the whole pastoral area. But in the services, when it's on the same Sunday, I use the same service, like the same sermon and everything. And sometimes I even use it a whole month, because I say, well, they don't visit each other, so when I do something different every week, we plan around 8 hours you need to in preparation for a service. That's what my state church said you should plan in your week. And I say, well, when there are only 10 people, and the next week I have also do a preparation for 10 people that takes 8 hours, that's not really worth it, and I could do better work for getting the people to get to know the church in that time. So, I try to take the sermon with me for the time I'm knowing that I won't go to a church twice, or when it's a big holiday, when it's Easter, or when it's Totensonntag, Sunday of the Dead. I say, well, I take it with me because it's important for the people, so we do it a whole month. Or Thanksgiving. I'm starting Thanksgiving in the middle of September sometimes, and it goes till the middle of October. Yeah. So every village who wants can do a Thanksgiving service. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Reverend Jonas, for your presentation. It was all really interesting, wasn't it? And great to be able to ask questions. We will look forward to next week. Next Wednesday, we're going to do another presentation. Not we. Jonas is going to do another presentation. And so next Wednesday at 7 p.m., we're going to learn about the history of the Protestant Church in Europe from the Reformation to today, all in 1 hour. So I hope you'll come back, and I hope you bring your history buff friends with you. Let us pray to close. God of grace, we thank you for the time that we've spent together this evening, the connections we've made, and what we've learned. We pray that Reverend Jonas and all who serve the church in Germany, that you would give them strength and perseverance, courage and inspiration. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.